Eastern River Valleys, Chapter 5. So when we talk about the river valleys, we talked about Egypt over here, we talked about Mesopotamia. Now we're going to talk about India and the Yellow River over here, Huanghu River. And so we're going to talk about these two over here. And I kind of summarize this stuff in this chapter relatively quickly, but the more focus of the book is generally on Western civilization over here. But we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about these now because they do interact a little bit. So around 2500 BC, cities in the Indus River Valley started off, and 2000 BC, cities in the Huanghe Yellow River Valley also started. Now, because of geography, these areas were cut off. If you look up here, there's the Himalaya Mountains up here, and then the plateau, Tibet, and Gobi Desert. So that kind of goes ahead and isolates these regions. So they became more self-sufficient. And there are fewer remains found, so less is known about the civilization, partially because of what they built with. They built less, a little bit less with stone and more with clay bricks. But so there's been lots of clay bricks found in this area here, but we also don't understand their language, which we'll get to in a minute. Over here, again, not a whole lot of things left behind. I mean, a reasonable amount of tombs and things like that, but still, it's harder to get a full picture. So the Indus River Valley, today it's mainly in Pakistan and India. Around 2500 BC, people called the Harappans settled in the Indus River Valley, named Harappans because of the city up here of Harappa. Now, Harappan civilization was twice the size of Egypt or Mesopotamia. The land was rich from the Indus River, and that annually flooded, so it was used really well, and actually flooded about 3 times a year, I think it is, and so they could plant crops at least 2 times a year, so they could plant crops regularly, then have the silt come in with the water, and so things were good. Now they grew cotton, wheat, peas, melons, dates, and they fished as well along the banks of the Indus River and other places as well. But the bricks they used, this is actually a brick from the time period. They were used made of mud that was baked in an oven, so they were a lot stronger than the sun-baked bricks of Mesopotamia. Now, in Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, these were planned communities with a definite city plan to them. And you can see these here are excavated, and they had lots of buildings on a perfect street grid. Each house had a well and a bathroom and drains to sweep the sewage away. Each city also had a citadel, which was a tall fortress that was an important building. And there was this thing called the Great Bath in a city called Mohenjo-daro, and that there still is a little bit unclear as to what was used for. Maybe it was used for cleaning rituals. Harappa also had a system of granaries to store additional grain. Now, it's unknown why the civilizations declined, but it could have been due to over-farming, deforestation, floods, or invasion, maybe a combo of several of those factors. By around 1700 BC, the Harappans were in a state of decline, and by 1200 BC, the Aryans had come in, and the Aryans are really what became modern Indians for the most part, or at least modern Indians in the northern part of India. Now, there is evidence of this lost civilization still. There's no major tomb has been discovered, but the writing has not been deciphered yet. So if you want to go ahead and decipher that, then it'd be very popular. They had more than one gods. Most of the gods were female, and this is a seal that was used, sort of like the kind we made in the art room the other day. Now, section 2, we're going to be dealing with the Huanghe Valley, sometimes called the Yellow River, and much of the information comes from legend, since not a lot has been found of it, at least the early on stuff. We know later what happened. Now, the Huanghe Valley was fertile, and every year it flooded, and it was cut off due to mountains and oceans, so it developed its own unique culture. And the first real dynasty that we know for sure existed was something called the Shang dynasty. There's the Xia dynasty before that, but that's largely viewed as a mythical dynasty. And they built the first Chinese cities with a palace at the center. The city, which was where the rich lived and most people who were poor lived in the countryside. They farmed millet, wheat, and rice, and raised cattle and produced silk as well. Now, spirits, ancestors, and kings, the Shang worshipped spirits, and they believed in natural things. Their religion was focused on pleasing those spirits, having respect for ancestors. As a matter of fact, you can't really see it very well in here, but this is one of the early tombs of a Shang leader, and actually these are decapitated bodies, and their skulls are put together in another location. And it's believed that these were human sacrificial bodies. So. For the tomb of this important person. Now, the families had rules on how they should behave towards each other. That's where we get the beliefs that end up being Confucian beliefs. Kings were the people with the closest relationship with the spirits, so they were able to ask for important things like good harvests. And the way they figured this out was they took either tortoise shells or turtle shells and bones, and they wrote on them, and then they threw them in the fire and they watched their cracks develop. So they'd write something on them and see what happens. And this is the oracle bone and shows some of the earliest Chinese writing. There were lots of nobles who helped run the kingdom, and so it was a larger upper class as well. Now, the Shang, it's a little bit unclear as to why they fell apart. There was a large gap between rich people and poor people, and they didn't trust each other particularly well, so they weren't very well united. And people came in later, and they were called the Zhou, and they came in around 1122, and they beat the Shang. One of the impressive things that the Shang left were these bronze works, some of the finest bronze even today. And that's it.